All right, welcome everybody. This is Youngstown's Talk Channel. Kellen and Joe here doing talk radio, the best from downtown Youngstown. How was your weekend, Miss Kellen?
It was pretty good. How about yours?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why are you just not having good days? I feel like you've got like a slew of bad days lately.
I've assembled quite a bit of them.
Why?
Yeah. But let's not make this about me today because I'll be griping. I want to start off a good Monday morning where the sun is shining and it's blue skies out there.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
Before we get started, a quick techie question. So over the weekend, I got a new phone. Like I've not had a new cell phone in probably close to 10 years. Like this thing was old. So I finally got a new cell phone, and I heard again recently, my husband was like, hey, you don't need to keep that plugged in all the time. You're going to ruin the battery. Is that true? Do we train our cell phones to learn how much battery to have? Like if you leave it plugged in too long, your battery's not going to then hold the charge very long because it's used to getting charged.
All right, so that used to be the case. But I think phones have gotten really good at managing their battery life. They had a couple bad eras where they would juice up the battery. It would be, overcharged, too hot, and it would be at 100% capacity. They're a little smarter now.
Okay. So. Yeah, because usually I'm like, I charge it all night, then I keep it plugged in till I leave, and then I plug it into my car anywhere I go because it was old and I needed it. But should I not do that with the new one?
Just don't even think about it. Don't get stressed out about it. The phone's smarter than us at this point. So there you go.
Yep, fair point.
Good.
All right.
All right. So do you know Viking Jim Algren?
The name sounds familiar.
Okay. So he was a producer, a host on talk radio for longest time. Really skilled historian. And he studied a lot of World War II, does reenactments. He's a serious dude when it comes to history. So I've always kind of looked to him to kind of fill in details that you and I, through regular schooling, had no idea. So he's really good at bringing light in that. Well, he joined a lot of the Trump, anti-Elon Musk protests. There's a lot. I don't know if you noticed this. There's a lot of local ones that have been going on. The courthouse, Department of Education steps. There was one in front of one of Michael Rowley's fundraisers.
I heard about that one, but that's the only one I heard of. Where have I been?
So they're not causing any problems, right? They're
peaceful protest.
They're vocalizing, their displeasure in things, which is part of, being an American. I mean, when you got grievances, you have certain avenues you can take to make yourself feel better. Many of them over the last decade have been less than, they don't do much. They have no teeth in them, and it frustrates the people who want there to be outrage and, to cause action. But with like Ruley ignoring and the Department of Education ruling, it feels like you're megaphoning into the abyss.
Yeah.
Right? And so I want to talk a little bit about the adequate and right ways to show displeasure. Cause I think we are freaking apathetic. And when we don't like something, and I think we're like spoiled little children. I look at the college kids who make a sign, and that is the extent of how they try to inflict change on things.
Yeah.
So give me your thoughts first on the First Amendment and how amped up you should be able to get when you're displeased with something.
How amped up you should be able to get? I mean, you could be amped up all you want, but how can you act on it is a totally different thing.
What expression should be in a civilized society? What expressions should be tolerated? Which ones should not be tolerated? Like, what are your feelings?
I mean, you could be vocal. You can speak your mind. You can say what you want to say, whether it's on a sign on a sidewalk somewhere. Maybe it's on social media. You have the right to have an opinion and voice that opinion.
All right. If nobody's listening to you and you're not getting what you want, can you ratchet it up and
can you throw a bomb on something?
You
should not.
We're flirting with those things, right?
Yeah.
We're lighting cars on fire. We're sitting across the roadway and blocking traffic.
Yeah.
And so we're getting into territories. And my own bias is, I think post Vietnam and the protests that happened there, I think when people are actually, they gravitate towards disagreement. And I love that, because I think holding government and power and authority accountable, is super important in our culture. But I think everybody sees like they want to be the famous Vietnam, whatever. They want to see the tank girl, right? The girl sitting in front of the tank in Communist Square. And everybody wants to be that martyr in their own way. And I think we're, the First Amendment, the right to speak, is not the same as the right to be heard and to be the right for anybody to care or give two shits about what you're saying.
Give you their attention.
Exactly. And I think when nobody's listening, that gets frustrating to the spoiled generation because they want to say it. And I was like, oh, we want you to be happy. We don't want you to, we don't want to ruin your day. And that's why they get mad and they ratchet it up and start getting in a territory that's no longer free speech. It's just equal.
Yeah.
There's a famous quote, and I'm going to probably Hanoi Jane. There we go.
Jane.
And so there's a quote, and it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, and I'm going to tear it up. But he said when they were contemplating breaking away from the monarchy, and the quote was, "Why would I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away?" And it's close to that, but basically it's, we can, in a democracy, act equally as tyrannical if we can't take being told no. And you're wrong, and you're going to have to be patient and win the next election if you want any kind of change. When we want change now, then we're like, hey, I'm just going to be a tyrant. And then you've done exactly what you're voting against.
And you've become the hypocrite.
Exactly.
You are the one spouting off all these ideals. And then when no one's paying attention to you or caring about the ideals you're spouting off, then you go and you just make them, or you get destructive, or you get, whatever, petty, and like that's going to be better. And it's like, well, now you've just destroyed your own ideals. What, to get attention? To get people to listen to you?
Should you be allowed to lie? Is lying a First Amendment protected right?
I mean, you can. I don't like it, but it gets.
So if I'm on the steps and I disagree with Elon Musk, and I say Elon Musk is just a thief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which it's not true. I said something that is not true. Am I allowed to say it? Right. And then somebody in the crowd has their First Amendment say right and say, no, he's not. And now both people have said their First Amendment rights, right?
Yeah.
Or taken advantage of their First Amendment rights. So
we should say maybe to an extent, because then you have like things like slander. And I mean, people get sued for things that they said based on the damage it caused, but that's probably different than what.
Well, in a utopian society, then lies would not be a part of freedom of speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you had objective measure of what a lie was.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you were in control of the predicate, you can say whatever you want because you controlled the predicate. So if the New York Times said that Elon Musk is a thief, and then I said he was a thief, right? That's not me lying. That's me reading the New York Times. And so long that I can control the New York Times, then I can tell that lie because it wasn't mine. I just read it somewhere.
How do you know it's a lie or it's just information that
because the New York Times could construct why it's not a lie by having one of those obfuscated quotes that you pull out of context. So it's this thing we weave where we can get away with telling untruths. And then when everybody's lying, then people like you and I reading headlines are like, this is an orchestrated misinformation, disinformation. We went through a whole freaking era, right? It was so dangerous to put information out there that was suspect and maybe untrue and caused devastation. Now we're in a whole different era. Like, since we're on the other side of it and we don't like it, I'm all about misinformation.
Yeah, I have a friend every so often will text me political articles that he finds, and he's like, what do you think about this? Do you think this is true? Do you think this is true? And I'm like, at this point in my life, I don't believe anything. I don't believe any of it. I'll look into it. I'll take it into consideration. I'll maybe see, what are other people saying? But you send me this outrageous headline of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. I went, it might not be. It might not.
All right,
be
so
happening.
let me read you this quote. I'm going to look it up real quick because this goes along with those protests.
Yeah. And Denise says Elon is suing media outlets for calling him a Nazi.
Yep, and that's That's the way that it should work.
In fact, I feel like media outlets get sued all the time from political figures for things they said, but then you don't hear about it,
right?
All
right. So Trump says, I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal. These networks, these newspapers are really no different than highly paid political operatives. Okay.
MSDNC, that's kind of funny.
So in principle, media outlets should be able to say whatever they want as protected by the First Amendment. And if they have those protections to say whatever they want, if they are captured by one party and then all they do is become a megaphone for that party, like we have modeling in the business world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have two companies that are competing, like we'll say a gas station, and one gas station goes $2 and the other one goes $1.99 and the other one goes $1.97. They compete against one another and they set prices based on how outmaneuvering and outdoing each other.
Mm-hmm.
If all the gas stations got together and they were like, dude, this is silly. We just keep doing this to each other. We're robbing from one another. Let's just all agree that we're going to set the same price, right? Now that is colluding and conspiring to set a force that is distant from what market controls would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like if that model is that if you show evidence that you have colluded, then the government can step in and stop you from doing that, get back to the market forces that control things. So in this case, if a news organization is getting their information and there's a controller behind it that's controlling narrative, that's not really a news organization. They're not collecting information. They're being given what to talk to. And so like in this case, all you would have to do was be honest about it and change the name of what you are. Like in order to be considered a news organization, this is how you operate. In order to be considered just a political machine for a party,
like an opinion
then this is
show.
what you call it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So all we'd really have to do is shift terms around, because they're being a news organization should sort of have prerequisites in order to carry that title, just like anything else. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, 100% I agree. Nothing ticks me off more than turning on a news organization and hearing nothing but opinion. And they pass it off as news, or they will get one-sided. They'll find someone that is so clearly to one side and only interview them and ratchet them up and make them look a certain way. And it's so biased that it drives me insane. And I almost want to be like, if this is what you want to present, fine, do that. But don't do it under this idea that you are a source of information. You are a source of an opinion is what you are. You're not sharing both sides. You're not being unbiased. You're not being objective. You take something and you run with it. And if I see that you're doing that, I'm going to count you as just that, not a good source of information. And it is maddening because so many of them do it and so many are allowed to do it. Or if they do say something that is just way outlandish and they get sued, do we know about it? Do we know how many times the president has sued a news organization because of an outright lie or slander or defamation of character? And they pay it and they move on and they do it again.
Just a speeding ticket for them.
Yeah. They're like, you're right. That wasn't true. And we caused a lot of damage saying something that wasn't true, but we'll pay you. And obviously we're not going to report that happened, right? We're not going to report that we got sued for saying something untrue and we actually had to pay you. We're just going to keep saying things untrue. And
what about like when you have these rent-a-protests? Like when I look at a protest, I can usually tell whether or not this was like a grassroots thing where a local organizer got mad about something and then they assembled, organic support through that.
Mm-hmm.
And then ones that are these outsiders that just hijacked your town to put their thing on your steps and make it look like it was an organic thing. So even the protests and even the outrage and the anger might be inauthentic and might have come from those same people who are buying narratives at MSNBC or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when I took interest when I saw Viking Jim at this protest, that was an authentic one. Those were sort of like somebody put out the national call to action, but then you had local people that joined into it because they were upset and it was a good way to express themselves. And I think that until those things get hijacked, I think people do pay attention to it. But once there was during the BLM protests, there was a local one that came to town here. And we had Derek McDowell, who was he was a community organizer at Youngstown Flea. He was big in government, and he actually ran across some of the outsiders that came to town that were ready to cause chaos, backpacks full of whatever. So these weren't people who cared about anything. They just went there hired. They were hired in. Rallies at political rallies, right?
Yeah.
If I want a rally to be off the charts, 10,000 people, and I just bust in 75% of them, so 25% were organic or 25% were organic and 75% were bust in or paid to be there. Like, how much of that I don't want any money to come into stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've wondered, the people throwing these Molotov cocktails at Teslas and blowing things up, like,
paid.
Yeah. Do you think so?
For sure.
NGOs and people that are like...
There was so much money flowing into those organizations that almost everything you saw was manufactured by people who wanted to get you and me upset. Because I think if given just make everything organic, it doesn't ratchet up as much. It's just regular people saying regular people things. They buy into it, they express themselves, and then they go home, right?
Yeah.
But these paid instigators, they will keep it going because the more devastation they do, the more headlines they get, the more they get paid. They will be a sought after, protest consultant kind of thing.
Yeah. And I see this on both sides. Like, it drives me insane when I see anything taken out of context or anything that looks shady. Like, and it's both sides. For, Trump's side, when everybody was accusing Vance of making up the Haitians eating dogs and cats story and admitting it. Everybody said Vance admits he made it up. And I said, did he? Sure enough, I watched a full interview. No, he didn't. You took his words out of context. Then Kamala Harris is having a rally and somebody shows up to protest and looks like a Trump supporter and starts spouting off stuff about God. And she says, you're at the wrong rally, because clearly this is a protester sent there to disrupt things. So she said, you're at the wrong rally. What did headline say? Kamala hates God. Kamala hates Christians. No, she doesn't. That's not what she said. Look at what actually happened here. And that ticks me off so much. Have you seen the leaked audio?
No, tell me about it.
I saw it this morning. Somebody posted a leaked audio is what it's called. JD Vance bashing Elon Musk. And it's nothing but audio of what sounds like JD Vance saying, Elon, he is an unelected official. He's not even American. He's from South Africa. He's making us all look bad. He is not the important one here. I am the important one here. And coincidentally says every Democratic talking point we have heard for several months. Little sus. And of course, you've got one side saying that's AI, that's fake. You've got another side saying, of course, you're going to say it's AI and fake because you don't want to admit it's real. And I'm like, is it real? It sounds like him. It does. Can AI sound like people? Yes. To me, the biggest red flag is, why in a single rant would he say every sentence the Democrats have been saying in one rant? It's not like he didn't say one or two disses about Elon. He said a whole bunch of disses about Elon in almost the exact verbiage that the left has been pushing. That's the red flag to me. I'd love for you to hear this and be like, ooh, is that AI or is that a hot mic moment?
Well, I'm on the 90% bandwagon. I think 90% of the stuff we see is completely fabricated. When you consider the amount of money that were going into those NGOs and being spent with taxpayer money, that was an endless trough for stuff like this to occur. Mm-hmm. If you rip all of that money, then they can still do this kind of stuff, but it has to be financed from people, which means that the Soroses are going to have to privately fund it, and they can't filter it through, government agencies and whatever to do it. So I think that solves a lot of our problem, because a paid protester, when you have 10,000 people that you got to pay $1,000 a day, that can get pretty pricey. And if it's coming from, Soros, who could give directly to a campaign and helping them get elected, and now they get to pay protesters. Now let's, consider that that's a lot less money to go into the fabrication side of things. And maybe we see a little bit, I don't think you ever get completely rid of it, but I think that you'll have less of it and it'll be easier to spot because it's so not as well funded.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We got a bunch of comments.
Okay, let's roll back a little bit to, let's see. Elon is suing the media outlets, journalistic malpractice. That's absolutely right. When you have journalists who, it's almost like scientists who get paid depending on the end result, the research that you come up with. If their livelihood depends on them being an operative for a party, then they're no longer a journalist. They are just a consultant.
If you are paid to report certain information, that's sus. If you're in a political position where your paycheck is based on certain things and only those things, that's sus. If you're doing a research and you get money if you prove one thing, that's sus.
So when you hold the title of a journalist or some important thing, should people be able to see who you are, who you voted for? Like, give me your averages. If you are a lifelong Democrat and you give to all the campaigns and you participate in activism, political activism, should I not be able to see that so that I can kind of put what you report through the filter of who you are? Maybe some transparency there.
Interesting.
A college that has, all of the professors have given to, liberal causes and voted Democrat. You can get sort of like a signal or a little bit of some insight into what they're teaching and what angle they're coming from.
Yeah. And the only reason that there's a downside to that, I think, is when you get these people, I saw a comment, it was down a bit further, Trump used to hate, or Vance used to hate Trump, but you won't comment on that. We've talked a lot actually about people that sort of change their minds or change their tunes. You can accuse Vance, you can accuse RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, anybody that is now on Trump's side who didn't used to be. People want to look at them some kind of way. So,
that is unnatural to be a supporter and never have anything unkind to say about somebody.
Right. And
nobody would believe that.
Whatever happens to this idea of, I like this, but I don't like this. I can get with them on this, but not this. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, I've always been for this side for years until this side did this.
Yeah, that's just, I want a mutiny to occur. And so that I'm going to sow some seeds of,
I would hate if someone saw who I typically vote for or who I have donated money to, and it's one political party. And then a year or so down the road, I'm like, hey, you know what? I really like this person now because I'm open to both sides and I support an opposite party. And they're like, wait, you can't be, but you did this and you did that. Like, I'm allowed to change my mind. I'm allowed to agree with both sides or disagree. Yep. I'm allowed to like certain things here and there, but all they want to do is just like, you got to be one or the other.
Get on your team and be loyal to it. Let's see. And who does that? Name one. I'm assuming the paid in. The article I was reading was about the most recent Bernie Sanders and AOC rally, and they analyzed the invitees. And what they were noticing is that they did GPS tracking. I don't know if you saw when they did 6 Mules or 9 Mules or whatever the Dinesh D'Souza thing. What they did was they tracked using GPS signaling from the carriers about people and where they've been and, whatever. So when they were delivering the votes to the different locations, they saw that one person was just visiting these boxes over and over again. That was the theory. That I don't know how they get access to that kind of data. But some of the people who went to this rally had gone to every Kamala Harris rally. And when you go to them all, you assume that you're a participant in all of them. Either you're a super fan of going to rallies or you're a paid, shill that just goes to
Yeah.
rallies because they, you're paid to do so. And I think that was the charge, that there were more people that did multiple rallies. Now, data point wise, I mean, you don't know for sure that they're just not a fan of going to rallies.
Yeah. Maybe they want to see, hey, I want to see what both people say in person. I want unbiased information.
But it's not beyond probability that there are people that are paid to get. Did you see the gamer girl that got the streamer? Do you hear about this? So there was a streamer, and she does video gaming, and she wears outfits that capture the guys. Right?
She's scantily clad.
Yes, playing games and whatever. Very popular.
Shocker.
And when she was streaming, she accidentally had on the screen a view bot application. And all it did was, when she streamed, the bot application would populate views by dumping a bunch of viewers in there that weren't real. They were controlled by her. So she would get a million people that weren't really real. They were controlled there. And then that would feed the algorithm to then attract other people, and they would see all these numbers. So then you're like, I'm watching someone who has 1 million views, but how many of them are legitimate and real
people?
Right.
Yeah.
But she exposed herself. So probability that this is what happens in our culture, where we plant some in the crowd, right, is not beyond. I don't have a person in mind. I don't know who is actually doing it, but it's pretty likely that it's happening.
For sure.
All right. Stephanopoulos, ABC had to pay $10 million to Trump. So one more way for Trump to steal. I don't know what that's referring to. And Morning Joe NBC is the word MSNBC. And January 6th, that is an important point. We've gone back and forth on the January 6th and how many of the people in the crowd were, FBI versus, paid provocateurs and whatever. And again, lots of bad misbehavior, but probably.
But was it like bad behavior? Was some behavior encouraged? Like
there was some suspect things that went on there that
sure.
lead to some conspiracy theories about how much they wanted misbehavior to happen, like the things you would do when you don't want misbehavior versus things you do want misbehavior. And again, ups the probability that they kind of wanted that and welcomed it in. So if they had to put some provocateurs that would gin it up, then I'm not opposed to hearing that happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Tony says you are paranoid. Good luck with that. I think
always.
I think that was about the leaked audio from Vance.
Okay.
I'm paranoid because I don't know what it is.
Apparently. All right. Well, last year Vance hated Trump, but you won't say that. I wouldn't be surprised if, and even in on the business side of things, when we get a bunch of business leaders together, we get a bunch of type A's together. There is more disagreement than there is agreement, and hashing it out and getting mad and getting riled up and throwing insensitive comments at one another.
Yeah.
That absolutely happens everywhere that I've been. And at the end of the day, everybody shakes hands, goes through compromises, make sure relationships aren't ruined forever. But if you think we just sit around and everybody just agrees and it's just a circle jerk, it does not happen. It really doesn't.
Yeah. Like you're paranoid because you question something.
Yeah, it's just not it's not the real world. If anything important happens, there's massive amounts of disagreement and probably some name calling and little bit
and
of egos.
if we didn't have disagreement, we would be an idiocracy.
We would.
Like we would all just go one direction and we'd be annihilated because nobody sees a threat ever and nobody has a new idea and we all just are like-minded until we all kill ourselves off. Or you get someone that's like, hey, wait a minute. What about this? I can't believe you even questioned us. I can't believe you had an individual thought.
Brondo, it's paranoid. What plants crave.
It is.
All right, let's see. Martha McCollum and Brett Baer called the 2020 election early in the evening for Biden. Tony says, put your red hats on so you look like a total fool.
Have you ever worn a MAGA hat?
I'm not political.
I don't own a MAGA hat. I've never claimed to be MAGA.
Now, again, like both sides have criticisms on you and I. But
thank you for interacting with our show. We appreciate
thank you.
Being
Proud
here.
Boys and Oath Keepers were paid and invited to one 6. Yeah, there's a I hope one day they make a documentary about this. Once the January 6th Commission destroyed a lot of that documentation, so maybe it ends up on the in the void of all other things that government controls and shuts down.
Years and years down the road, we'll have a president signing an order to
release the January 6th
document.
It's very likely that we know what happened. It's very likely what we're guessing right now is the most simple and logical what happened. So you don't have to kick it down the road. That's probably what happened. Everything from the fake moon landing. I still have people that misunderstand my take on the fake moon landing, by the way.
That you don't think the moon landing happened, or what is this?
You don't know my take on fake moon landing?
I don't think so.
Okay. So we were in a race to get to the moon with several other countries. It was like a big ego thing where we wanted to be the first, and so did other countries, and there was this race. And I think we went just like was suggested, but the video footage or the evidence or the presentation was not as grand as we wanted it to be. So when we got back from it, we used what we did and we theatrically recreated it and got perfect video and perfect audio so that we could publish out to the world what we had done. So what we're watching, we probably didn't see the real deal. We saw the recreated deal in the simulations and the rehearsals and practices. So
both happened and was fake.
And part of it was
happened, but
because we saw it makes logical sense. If it was a ego race to see who's done it, we wanted to be the first, but we also wanted it to be the most grand. And if we got grainy video and audio that was unintelligible and whatever, you can totally see our recreation where we're like, it happened. We're just like dressing it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's good more TV.
Likely. It's more likely. I don't have evidence of it, but it seems pretty likely that that's what we saw on our television.
Could be.
I think you're forming a circle. Disagree with me. I don't like agreeing with me. So agreeing with you.
Okay.
So disagree.
I'm going to disagree about which.
I don't know. Pick the what Trump said about media organizations and charging them with illegal behavior of colluding against him, whether or not it should be illegal. I don't necessarily think he should be shut down. I think he just says that it should be illegal.
It should be illegal. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let me be devil's advocate. Okay. Yeah. It should not be illegal because whether or not you I'm a news organization or claim to be, whether or not you like what I'm saying or reporting, I can do it. You can't stop me. You're not going to make it illegal for me to say anything because you can't prove that I don't have good reason to say this. If I say you hate puppies and you're like, I don't hate puppies, I'm suing you for saying that. All right, Joe, do you have a puppy? Do you? You don't, do you?
I hate puppies.
Right. Because you hate them. Yes.
You knew it.
And really, you're like, I just don't own a puppy, but I don't hate them. Right. Because you hate them. Okay. And now you can't say that what I'm saying is not true.
Here's where this ends up. So if you have the ability to start your own news organization, right? And so I'm MSNBC and 98% of my criticisms are what my headlines are. And I'm collecting some money from the Democrats and I'm saying my opinion that's sort of complimentary to Democrats, but very critical of Republicans. So I get to start my new one, right? My Joe's News Agency.
Yeah.
And now I want to do the exact same thing on the other side. I want to be hyper critical of the Democrats and I want to just lay it on for the Republicans. As long as I have the same access to what you have, I get in the same room with you. I get the chair right next to you. I get to go on the plane with the president. I get to collect all the money like you do. As long as it's equal footing, then we've just now have two sources. And if you're Republican and you want to watch this, and if you're Democrat, you have to watch this. If you have a special deal where you're in the room and I'm kept out of the room, that's the part that should be illegal.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying that Trump's doing that Trump has kicked out certain news sources and only has certain ones in there. I don't know if this is true or not.
Okay. But not kicked out, but not given preference. Given like if I took the press pool room and I organized the first 5 seats in the front. And they were all liberal deals, and they always got their questions answered, and they always got paid attention to. And then I just shifted things around and put different people in different spots and give equal share. I think that's, opening up alternative media in the press briefing room, moving people around. I think that was the right thing to do because it gives shared access between the different flavors of journalism that comes out of that room.
Now they really welcome like podcasters and social media people on there.
And so that's the part that I disagree with, is if you got a sweet deal, right, we're insulated from the other view. That's what the part that I think should be no more. And I think they addressed that pretty well. So I too, and here's another circle jerk, I too don't think anybody should be limited or made illegal unless there's true illegal behavior going on.
Yeah, I don't think it's up to someone to make it illegal for you to say idiotic or untrue things. Right. It's up sort of to the American public to be like, you've been caught saying something idiotic or untrue. I now hold, you have no stock with me. If I find a news organization to say something that was so blatantly taken out of context and they ran with it, I'm not listening now to anything else you say. Right. You're clearly one-sided.
And again, as long as because bad speech is righted by good speech, right? More speech. So really, if I felt like there was a news organization that was not telling the truth, I would want more speech in the room to offset it.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Why would you say that the 1-6 committee destroyed documents? Because Trump said so. A little research would prove that wrong. I will do that after the show. In fact, next time you're talking, I'm going to look to see it. That is what I heard, that documents that were not preserved, and so we will see it. Tony said maybe Elon could just blow up the moon. Everything he launches explode. That is incorrect.
I don't think that's...
Tony, listen. I watch every launch. I watch every launch that SpaceX
He's a big space nerd. It's true.
Yeah. Big time. I've been watching since 2014, since the Starhopper, the little canister of the Starship in its total infancy. And when even the Falcon 9s in the beginning, they blew up a lot when they were getting it right. And they have run 400 Falcon 9 missions. How many of those 400 were successful? 398. 2 mishaps, right?
Wow.
So if you go percentages, it is less than 1% of ships blowing up. So again, statistics wise, if you're just judging starships, most of them blew up. That is experimental craft that is still being tested. And if you look all of the iterations, they all blew up in miraculous ways. But being able to say things like everything, which that has a meaning to me.
Yeah.
Everything he launches explodes. Incorrect.
And you have also shown me the one time a while back, we were talking about internet deep fakes and things being fake online. You've shown me video of, wasn't it Elon Musk at like some rally or giving a speech or talking about something, and it was completely fake.
Fabricated? Yeah.
And it looks like him. It sounds like him. It's his mannerisms. It's a topic or subject matter he would be addressing a crowd about, and none of it was real. It was proven
totally
to
fabricated.
be fake. Yeah.
Let's see. Isaac Schuster, Rhino guy, watched again. He just can't help it.
What?
Isaac Schuster, Rhino guy.
Might have to elaborate, again. Luke.
Yeah, give me more, Luke.
Just can't
let's see. Tony doesn't like puppies, is un-American. Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. That if you hold a counter position, then you hate America. Like, what's that supposed to do? Come on, shut up.
Does Tony believe that our little skit was real?
Which skit?
When I said, "You don't own a puppy, you now hate puppies."
We were being.
That was a skit. That wasn't real.
Yeah.
Internet people.
Yeah.
Okay.
The left is so jealous of Musk. If he were a leftist, they would give him a ticker tape parade. It's the foolishness that is connected with this. And if you look at the dissemination, the Nazi, he's getting contracts, he's evil, like all of this stuff, like let's go back and decrypt, like, where did all of this originate? How did we come to the conclusion that he is all these things, except for it's convenient if he were all those things for criticisms.
Yeah.
but none of these things are true. And so, like, how can you keep saying an untrue thing just because it's convenient and not have the regular media saying, okay, guys, this is getting outrageous. Things are getting set on fire at this point.
Yeah.
We're inciting now. Everything that's happening is because we won't get off the narrative that these things we're charging him with.
Because if things didn't go off the rails so much, what the heck would they report on? Hey, guess what? Everybody got some unbiased factual information today and nobody got mad.
Well, I mean, we set the standard with January 6th, and by Trump saying that, hey, there was some stuff wonky in the election, but let's everybody be peaceful, that translated that he incited violence, right? And so the standard was said, okay, well, let's not ratchet up and get the temperature turned up so much. But now, like a year later, a couple years later, now you can do outright calls for people to do violence, and that's not inciting. So the people that want Elon to be put through this meat grinder keep using that language that does it, and then it's somehow they're the causer of the information and also the reactor to that same information. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. Oh, have you heard about the Tim Walz? I could kick their asses.
Yes.
Quote. So I heard that, and again, first reaction is, I bet you that was taken out of context. Did he actually say that? Tim Walz saying you can kick Trump supporters' asses. This sounds a little suspect. I better go watch. And I watched the video. Oh, yeah, sure enough, he said it. And I was like, oh, all right, that was the true one, which he was joking. I know, does it get anybody up in arms and riled about it? Maybe if you've got an agenda to push, you want to get mad about it. He was, I don't know, he was joking. But again, okay, but can you imagine if Trump said that? Or Elon said that? Or anybody else on the other side said that? It would just have, oh my gosh, that just would have gone all over the place. People would have been up in arms and, yeah, how dare he talk about harming people? And I'm just like, so one-sided.
Well, I honestly, in history, when you call someone out like that, right, you have a duel, and then you get to prove it. Take your swords, take your guns, make it a fist fight, put them in the octagon. Like,
yeah,
that should not have no repercussions to it. Like, I want to see Tim Walz get his ass handed to him. That would be amazing. And I think he's this, I don't know, he's just a weirdo. Like, he is such a weird dude.
You know who he reminds me of? And I didn't mind him during the election. Like, when they did the vice presidential debate and everything, I was like, I kind of like this guy. And I was cool with him. More and more now, it feels very much like he's trying to be the cool kid.
Yes.
Like,
that's the weird part.
Yeah, like he was bullied in school and now is trying to look like the cool bully. It's just the vibe I'm getting.
Well, and because he knows what he's being charged with, but he doesn't know how to respond to it. So he says the most outrageous things in response to that. So I think he did something like, all right, so they're calling him very feminine. They're calling him not a manly man, right? And so, like, if somebody said that to me and I wanted to be like, oh, this kind of hurts my feelings a little bit to not be called a girly man.
They were saying that.
So he went on stage and said, I could take apart an engine, right? Or I could fix an engine. And I'm like, you went right to engines? Like,
stereotype.
Better, like, thing to say? Like, that was just weird to me. How those overcompensations manifest. I got a call here, so let's take a call. All right, caller, you are on the line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I lived in Minnesota for 17 years, so I know all about Tim Walz. Ooh. And he's one of the most destructive governors in this country. In 2022, he had a surplus of $17 billion for the state of Minnesota. And by 2028, he's projected to have a deficit of $6 billion.
Wow. So
he wastes taxpayer money. Minnesota is like the 5th or 6th highest state income tax. It's a small state, 5.6 million people, but also a lot of corporations are based there. So they're getting a lot of corporate tax, and then they, really tax the people, something awful. Run such a deficit on a tiny state, a large surplus, and then turn it into a deficit in just a few years, shows you what he's like. They also had a big Feeding Our Future scandal, which was during COVID. They were supposedly making all of these meals over the summer for poor children. Well, it turned out to be a huge scam, and it cost the government $250 million. And a bunch of people were indicted. And it's another scandal, you know, that's really related to him. I mean, he's the executive of the state of Minnesota. And then, of course, you had the George Floyd riots where Lake Street burned for 4 days, 3 nights and 4 days. And he was not going to call up the National Guard. So one of our state senators, Paul Gazelka, called President Trump. President Trump turned around and called Tim Walz. And then the National Guard was called up. So during his rallies, President Trump claims that it was he himself who called up the National Guard from Minnesota, and he's talked about Minnesota in many of his rallies. So the guy is just a complete loser, and he basically throttled the whole state of Minnesota. It's a disaster. So that's why I moved back.
So what do you think elevating a guy like that onto the national scene? Why do they do that? That seems like the worst pick for vice president, and then giving this guy any attention whatsoever. What about him makes him attractive?
Well, for the deep state, he's one of the most radical governors, but then most Americans still don't know really anything about him. You know, Minnesota's a tiny state. How would you know anything? So, I mean, did you know all of these things about him? I mean,
I knew nothing about
him. You know,
him
so they passed him off as some harmless, folksy kind of guy.
He's like the reality,
people. First of all, he's a communist.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a teacher. I'm a nice guy. I want us all to get along. Like, he's a man of the people, and I'm a nice guy, kind of, you know.
I'm a coach. I know all these plays. I can run the screen pass on the court.
Yeah, I think he was a nominee for someone to seem likable, maybe. I don't know.
He's a caricature.
And right now, Minneapolis is in a tailspin. It's in a death spiral. Because it's so dangerous in the city, in the Twin Cities, that no one will go down there for any reason. They won't frequent businesses or anything. It got to the point where landlords told businesses, don't pay your rent, just pay your utilities and see if you could make it. They still can't make it. So he deep six the whole state, and definitely the Twin Cities. It's a disaster. I mean, and the crime is like, in 1 month, they had 700 carjackings in the city of Minneapolis a couple Januaries ago. I mean, people can't imagine, you know, what that George Floyd riot turned into for the police officers. They had like 900 and some police officers for the city of Minneapolis before George Floyd, and then about a year later, they were down to 600 because people were just walking off the job. You know, in Minnesota, they have something called the Minnesota Freedom Fund, where if you're poor, they'll just pay your bail. So you could murder someone, you could rob, you could armed carjack, do whatever you want. And the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which Kamala Harris supported, by the way, will just bail you right out. So you don't maybe even spend a night in jail for very serious crimes. So if you're a police officer, how can you work under those conditions, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the police force quickly got depleted. So, I mean, nobody knows any of this about Tim Walz unless you live there, probably, or unless you really do a lot of research on him. But look how they passed him off to the public, to the whole nation. It was like he was just this, you know,
nice
kind of friendly kind of guy that's harmless.
Yep.
Right?
All right.
Thank you
for calling.
So when you said his name, I just had to call in.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I mean, it makes sense. Here's my thesis. Like, it's always been this way. You know, Democrats do very well when the populace is dependent on government. And so, like, you remember Paul Harvey?
No.
All right. There's this famous "If I Were the Devil," and you have to listen to this sucker because
That sounds familiar.
It's probably from the 50s or 60s when it first aired, and I've listened to it just about every year as a way of saying, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And honestly, maybe we'll even play it during the recording here. But anyway, so if I wanted to, let's just say I wanted more voters by making the entire country dependent on government, what would I do? Right? Well, would I make it so that go to cities and that are just criminal bastions and hemorrhaging money and everybody's suffering, and then take the guy that orchestrated and engineered that and make him do it on a national level? that'd be a really good idea if I benefit from other people's peril.
Yeah. There's I don't know who he was or what his name was. I'm gonna have to search him up again. But there was a guy that I saw online kind of during the election who was talking about he was hired by different political parties years ago. He used to work with a lot of different politicians, and their whole thing was about digging up dirt on people, on candidates. And he says there's literally this sort of method that you follow to make someone look bad. Like, obviously, if you can find dirt, any dirt, were they inappropriate with a woman? Did they say something risque? Whatever, you throw that out there. If you can't, you go to they're crazy. They're crazy. They're dangerous. They're out of their mind. Look at this nut job, and you make them look like they're mentally ill or crazy or dangerous. And he listed all these things. He's like, and you watch every candidate that comes up, you follow the order of what they do. And sure enough, like RFK Jr., if they didn't have dirt about this, they brought up this. They brought up this. They made him look nutty. They made him seem dangerous. And I was like, holy crap. They do. And it's people for hire. People are hired to make you feel a certain way.
That is an entire industry in politics, is to do research. I mean, and the fourth step is if you can't get them on the crazy and they can't get them on then you just fabricate. You have Russian prostitutes pissing on someone.
Flat out lie.
So yeah, it's an entire industry, and it's extremely effective. Let's see. Luke says everything people say and do on Facebook is real and true. You guys hate puppies. Youngstown Pizza Reviews and myself are arch enemies. It's amazing what people will believe.
Yeah,
for sure. Put on your red hats and dance for me. I don't know if you think that irritates me, but it really doesn't.
Yeah. So, I do have a Maha hat.
Do you?
I should wear that next time. I do. So you take this person as the truth. The caller?
And, the sounding board is that if you have something to say, you can come say it. Yeah. And then if you disagree, then you can come on. Phone number works for you too. 330-595-1600.
Tony, you're welcome to call us
and take anything that last caller said and correct the record.
Yeah. And Tony, if you have a good source of information, by all means, we are open to it. We will look at anything, consider anything.
And I did talk radio for over a decade, and that I felt that was the most valuable part of talk radio, is regular people had the ability to, whatever they felt, get on the air and say those things, right? And it exposed everybody who was listening to a perspective of the caller. Some of them were batshit crazy for sure. Some of them knew stuff that I absolutely didn't know, but it always created threads of thinking where I got to counter something I believed and see if it was true. A lot of the times I would go look it up right after and I was right, they were wrong. But the sounding board, that being able to hear stuff that you disagree with on a regular basis, is a skill.
Yeah. Absolutely. I watched a really interesting podcast last week. I just realized Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California. Yeah. He's got a podcast now. And one of his first guests was Charlie Kirk, who is a known conservative. He has his own organization that supports conservative and Republican ways of thinking. And so Gavin Newsom, who's a Democrat, interviewing Charlie Kirk, who's very conservative. And they had an honest and respectful and an open discussion where Gavin's like, I want to know, why are Democrats viewed the way they are right now? Why do you think Republicans won by such a margin? And what is it we're not seeing? How do you guys handle things? And it was so interesting. And I encourage anybody to watch that. Number one, learn how to have an open, respectable discussion with someone that maybe you don't agree with. And number two, be willing to hear that person out, consider it. You don't have to buy it all. You don't have to take it and run with it, but consider it. And to me, it was fascinating. I think Charlie Kirk made so many good points about, for example, people being accused of things that they aren't and getting sick of that.
Well, as a viewer, when you see an opposing view sitting in the same room, it's harder to throw those narrative charges out there. You're a little bit more, that stuff kind of is mitigated a little bit, because you can't just get on stage and say the untrue thing and wait 3 news cycles for someone to respond. That dude's sitting right across from you, and he might be smarter than you. So you watch conversations take a whole new level, and they're valuable to the viewer like me.
Yeah. And I think people should look that up and watch it, because I mean, it was everything. It was like, Charlie Kirk told him that he believes the Democratic Party, their whole shtick, their whole thing is they create victims. You create victims from all kinds of situations. And if you can't find one, you make one. And so you make these victims, you make these oppressors, and then you start saying, well, you're racist and you're this and you're that. And it's like, but I'm not. Now you've lost me. Like, you can't just accuse of all these things being the case that are not the case.
And this is a smart move on Gavin's side, Gavin's side, because number one, you're someone who they have in mind to run in 2028. Okay, so getting in
which Charlie pointed that out, and he's denying it.
But come on, dude.
Yeah, he's like, yes, you are. He's like, no, I have no plans to run.
But if you're part of the operation of the Democrat Party, you have to be thinking like, we got to change gears and do different things, because we are our big California's and New York's are hemorrhaging population, right? And so if you can't import, illegals into your state to do your vote bidding at this point, and you're going to lose your voters, and I think California is going to lose 3 House seats the next time around, because they're losing so much of their represented population that they're seeing the writing on the wall that they are in a death spiral. So you're going to see people who are not necessarily moderate because they want to be. They're going to start to moderate and hit that middle territory, or if not, the Democrats are just going to be irrelevant. You take away their media machine, your NGO machine, your capture on institutions and academics, you're hemorrhaging people to other states. I mean, they're losing everything that it took them decades to put together, all in the first 4 months of one administration.
Yeah. Another really good point that he pointed out is they were talking about why you see a lot of conservative leaning podcasts, long form podcasting interviews, and almost none, 1 or 2 maybe.
Why is that?
And Charlie Kirk said, in this type of interview, in this type of long form podcasting, you have to be able to discuss something off the cuff. There's no mic in your ear. There's no script to follow. There's no studying for questions are coming up. It is you talk, go, having prepared nothing. You speak off the cuff. And he's like, Democrats can't do that. They didn't do that, basically, is what they should say.
All right, here's a second theory of mine.
Okay.
I don't think Democrats have as much support as they purport to have. Okay, so the shilling at the rallies is sort of analogous to the shilling in all other departments. I think a lot when they're made to survive on their true supporters aren't sending in lots of checks. If it weren't for the incoming government money and the capture of the institution of government to support them, they would. I mean, Air America. I used to listen to Air America all the time on Sirius back in the day. Okay. You familiar with Air America?
Not really.
Okay. So Rush Limbaugh was sort of the king of conservative talk radio. It was everywhere. They had huge listeners. They bought the products. They spent money to support, to hear a conservative on the radio. Well, Air America was the counter to that, where they were privately funded, and a bunch of people created a network on satellite radio as the same counter to Rush Limbaugh. And they birthed a lot of liberal hosts. And Air America doesn't exist today because they lack the people that are financially inspired to support with their dollars and their loyalty. And so they do it for a little while. So for instance, like when Trump wasn't in office and the liberal media couldn't write headlines about Trump, they started hemorrhaging money. They started going out of business and laying people off. And their whole model was gone because Trump was the reason that they stayed through the 2016 on. And so you dry up, like, so if I'm MSNBC or what was that news agency where they had all those subscriptions that were fabricated? Was that AP? Anyway, what
might have been.
So if you were failing, but we need you, you're part of our narrative machine.
Politico.
Was it, Politico.
Politico,
You're right.
Yeah.
If we can just figure out a way to get money into your system, then you're alive. You don't have to deal with market forces like viewership or people, advertisers and whatnot. With that going away, we need liberal voices there. So we're going to be very not disappointed, but disappointed that if they all go out of business and it's just dominated by conservative talk shows and conservative movies and conservative music, that's equally as bad. I want a 50-50 split where I can turn on one station and know what I'm getting, turn on another station, know what I'm getting, and use the different pieces of information.
Yeah.
If you don't think the conservatives will do what the liberals did if they had the opportunity, you're mistaken.
Like, I watched Joe Rogan. A lot of people will say he's kind of right-leaning.
He's so not right-leaning.
To me, if he looks right-leaning, it's because he has people on the right on his guests. He equally invites people on the left. They just don't come. He talked to Vance. He reached out to Kamala Harris, wouldn't come on the show. And what I like about the podcasting and the long form interviews is it's unedited. It is uncut. I don't care if they have a technical difficulty and they have to stop and fix a mic real quick. You're watching that. They edit nothing out. You see what was said in the context in which it was said.
Yep.
And so I think that if you're afraid to go on a platform that is like that, then how can you be surprised when your favorability is down?
You wouldn't do it if everything was curated and manufactured. Then that format isn't for you. It has to be managed and clipped and edited later in order for you to come across the way the narrative needs you to be.
You know what they're going to ask. You know what you're going to say. You maybe have some information already.
Even if there are missteps and it's unedited, you're a lot more likely to believe when you see the raw part versus the pristine, I would think it's a CBS interview that was edited to perfection for Kamala at the time, right?
Yeah.
If it's too pristine, kind of knowing the subject, right, then it's not believable.
And that's kind of how I feel too about this whole, and we can look into it more, but the whole like leaked audio supposed of Vance going on a terrible.
Your caller, you were on.
Hey, it's Luke. What's up?
Hey, what's up, dude?
I wanted to say that, Kellen, I don't think you made a comment real fast that Joe Rogan is left or is right leaning.
Right leaning.
And I don't think he is. I think,
he gets accused of being right.
A lot of people. Oh, he's 100% accused of being right. Just like Isaac and I are accused of being right or left depending on what we're saying at the time, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right? Because I've literally been called a snowflake in the morning and a right-wing Nazi in the afternoon. And it's amazing how that works whenever, if you're kind of playing the middle ground, which is kind of what I think Rogan does. Like, he goes hard left on things. Like, he wants to legalize drugs or all drugs. I mean, I'm pretty sure he wants to legalize all drugs or a lot of drugs. And at the same point, he's for gun rights. And it just confuses the crap out of the people that are hard left or hard right. And they just hear one thing and then they focus on it. And it's like, that guy's a right-wing nut job or that guy's a left-wing crazy person. It's funny when people say that. So it just reminded me of how, and I know Joe gets called out all the time too. Joe, you get called snowflake and right-wing nut job
all the time
too, correct?
And he hates America and puppies.
Yeah. Well, I did hear you guys hate puppies, so that's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and I see snippets too, where we had somebody on this morning that's saying, put our red hats on and we're so conservative, this and that. Yep. But somebody will see a clip of me saying, oh, Tim Walz looks like a nice guy. And they'll run with that on the internet. And they were like, you're delusional. I can't believe you support Tim Walz. And I can't believe it. And I was like, I can't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly support, and I donate to, and Isaac and I both do, we donate to a group called Full Spectrum, which is it's a group that protects the gay rights, and I support everything they do. I don't agree with everything they say. I don't agree with everything they do, and we've supported them. And we take so much grief. I just became a thing. I mean, so much grief from. Is that the male guy?
Yeah. He's gone though.
Isaac. But again, it's like you do that, and then all of a sudden I'm getting called a freaking snowflake, woke, and all this for just supporting people. And then the next time I'll post about the freaking deer in Mill Creek Park, where I'm like, look, these things need to be eradicated because there's too many of them. You need to cut the numbers down. And I'm being called a freaking right-wing nut job by these freaking people. It's unbelievable how it's a draw a line in the sand. I can't stand it.
Yeah. Yeah. We feel you.
So that's all I got. Getting me all fired up. Just and Joe.
Yeah.
You better start liking puppies again, you freaking anti-American.
I don't have any pets, and I won't have anyone.
Maybe if you took the red hat off, you would like puppies again.
Take the red hat off and buy your kid a puppy, you freaking Nazi.
Thanks, Luke. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is he still on the phone, or did you hang up?
No, I hung up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, to me, like, the internet can be such an interesting place, but so ridiculous, and probably more ridiculous. But yeah, we talked about, to his point, we had a conversation one day about trans and LGBTQ community, and we talked about, being respectful to people, and if someone comes up to me and they say they want a certain pronoun, all right, I'll be respectful. I've got friends who were in that community, and I support them when I can. But then we'll say, but this. But I don't necessarily agree with this aspect of it. I don't love maybe involving children in this. I wish maybe we could look at it in this way. And depending on where in that conversation you tuned in, you're either super woke or super Nazi. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize. How can I be both?
Yeah. And we have the whole show that we do in conjunction with this one is having the unpopular take on things. So if I say, I don't like the pronouns thing, and I don't care if you do, and I'm just not going to do it because I don't want to. Mm-hmm, right. Mm-hmm. That's me taking a negative approach where I'm not going to, I don't feel strongly enough to go out there and make sure nobody uses or doesn't use pronouns. I'm just going to opt out, and I don't feel like playing in that game. So who do you think's more hated, where you have sort of like a subdued version of it, and I just have a F this, I'm taking my ball and being nowhere near it. I take more flack for that because the teams need your support. And especially if they make the gravity such that it's unpopular for you to not support something, because if you don't support it, then you hate it.
Yeah.
Right from not support to hate to super fast.
Depending on who you voted for, you may or may not hate women. And I'm like, I don't hate women, and I don't feel strongly enough about ABC topic, whatever, to get involved. I'm just going to go and do this. And to them, that's a vote against them. That's a vote for hatred or for whatever. And it's like, I just chose not to get involved in that.
I don't care enough about it, and you can't force me. I have the freedom to say, screw you, I'm not playing.
Yep.
Sam says, most people do not understand the left and right of politics. I've run into this myself. The American public really needs to work on educating themselves on what the left stands for and what the right stands for overall.
Yeah. And Sam, would you say too, I wonder, if people were to truly look into both sides, do you think we would find more similarities or more differences between what each person wants? And now they both want to be elected.
Okay, so what they would drag into the conversation would be very moderate between the two, but what they really believe. So like if you want marijuana to be legal, right? The unpopular thing is that you want marijuana because you like being high and you just like being high. The popular part is that you can use the hemp for building materials and it has medicinal value. So the parts of what you want that you drag into the communal section would be different than what you really want. So if I'm a socialist, right, I know that I want us to just hijack all the means of production from other people and make it government controlled so they can dole it out. But I can't say that and bring it into the conversation. So I have to do socialism light when I'm talking to you. So when I would not have the courage to say what I really feel. So I think a lot of left and right people keep their real feelings out of the conversation, but they're there. They really are. And that's why it's really easy to take the other side and condemn them, because it conflicts with what you really want to happen. So if I'm like, in the marijuana debate, okay, let's just, instead of doing go get high and have free reign with it, let's just make legal building materials with hemp. Well, that's not going to be a sufficient deal, and it's going to push me into the fringes of my argument super fast, because I thought that would fly, and you would just say, oh, make it legal to get the fringe benefit instead of the primary benefit, that really what I'm after.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of maybe level-headed thinking people would find a lot more similarities, but of course you have the extremists on both sides.
But they're different. If you think, you cannot have someone who thinks property should be yours and you should be left alone in the same room with someone that you don't deserve the property and you shouldn't be able to say certain things. What can they agree on?
Or you should pay more for your property than me.
Right. These are binary choices that don't have a lot of overlap. So the only way that you sort of can get a middle ground with these two is I give up a little bit and I give up a little bit, and that's just not the political climate. It can't be. It's not an honest concession. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
And Sam said a little bit of both as an answer to your question.
It would be. I just thought of something, and
honestly, if you could argue that wouldn't be good either, right? Because if we had, I know everybody wants there to be no frictions, and then we don't want to fight. We think we can get so much more done. But if we can't agree with what gets done is good, you're going to have 50% of the people that get further away from what they consider good when the other person gets their way. And then so all that does is juice them up, right, to take it back from the other side. And it's just that pendulum swing.
Do you want to, I don't even know if we have the capabilities to. It's not very long. Do you want to pull up that JD Vance leaked audio and see if you can tell?
I want to listen to it when I can really dig into it. I won't be able to hear it all that great, but yes, I do. And it's probably fabricated. But even if it isn't, like, I'll take both sides of this. If it's fabricated, I'll say, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, my question is, let's say it's real and he really said these things. And let's say he even meant them. It almost sounds like if it is real, he's reading like media talking points. Like I said, it's just too coincidental. Let's say it's real. Let's say he meant it. Let's say these are his own thoughts. What do people think this means? Somebody was like, haha, they're unraveling. And then what? Like, they unraveled, they fought among each other. Do you think then they implode and a Democrat takes over? Like,
it's projection. Like I said, in that realm, I think there can be disagreements that come to some kind of a conclusion. In Democrat circles, if they don't all agree uniformly and all say the same message, they're ostracized. They're pushed out of the group because they need the solidarity in that. So you can't have a reasonable, like, take even the black causes, right? You have a Thomas Sowell or a Morgan Freeman. Is it Morgan Freeman, the voice guy? Yeah, Morgan Freeman. Yeah. That they'll go off the reservation. And what do? Are they like, oh, maybe a reasonable voice in here that whatever? No, they cast him out as some kind of red hat wearing, Republican, because they didn't do their job, which was to support the narrative. We'll take dissenting voices. I mean, you think if you put RFK Jr. and Trump in a room that they're going to have uniform agreement on all things? It's going to be, RFK is going to say, Trump's in charge. It's his administration. I can agree with him on the stuff for HHS. I'm going to disagree with him on pretty much everything. I'm going to do my job in my lane, right?
Yeah.
And if we have some conversations where we get to disagree, it doesn't change anything. He's still the boss, and I'm still the HHS person. That's the extent of our relationship.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, when I say things like it's going to be a long 4 years. Oh, good morning from Hawaii. Squirrel. It's going to be a long 4 years with all the complaining. And and obviously it's not one-sided. It doesn't, whoever's in the White House, the other side is going to complain a lot. But I don't get where they think they're going with it. Like, what do you think's going to happen? We still elected a side. They won. We're obviously not all going to get along. We're not all going to agree. So what do? We have a vote. Then there's a winner. And for the next 4 years, that's it. This is what it is.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Obviously, there are cases.
Listen, no. Let me correct this.
Okay.
They are not going to just sit around and wait for the next election.
Oh, no.
No, hold on. Let me finish here. There are 4 things that I put on my list that if the signs didn't work and the chanting didn't work and the, civil protests didn't work.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Number 1, I need to crash the effing economy, right? So the economy goes down, public support erodes, people get mad, that'll undo them. Number 2, if I can dismantle the cooperatives within the administration and make a mutiny happen, that undermines it and that stops it, right? I can really...
You're talking about stops it in the tracks or will change after the 4 years is done?
No, like in the track. I'm saying things, if I wanted to disrupt the fast movement toward dismantling these things and making those changes and cutting out the Democrats' trough, that if I want to disrupt that, I create discontent within the administration happening, trying to kill the economy. Tim Walz said, I look at the Tesla stock and every day I cheer on the dropping of the Dow Jones and also the Tesla stock. And then the last thing, which is the big one, this is what they're really hoping for, is making these protests hit the BLM, burn buildings and really get off the chain. That would be disruptive. So that would be the trifecta. If I want to undermine the Trump administration, I would get or a war. If I can get a war to happen, if I can get the economy to crash, if I can get the discontent within the administration, and I can get protests to be huge protests where people are being shot, that undermines what happens. And that's how to bring them to
all of which is let's destroy our own people and our own economy win.
Because it's good to that end, and they can justify that kind of bad behavior as long as they can accomplish 2 things. They can't tie it back to themselves. I send out my people to go take care of the dirty work, make that stuff happen. And I could be the observer. It's like, how did that happen? Right.
But here's your hero who's coming in and saying, I told you shouldn't have voted for that person. Let's fix everything.
If I can observe this, so can the Trump administration. They have contingencies to be able to deal with the Democrats are likely to do. And every level of frustration where, okay, that one didn't work. And then that one didn't work. Like if the economy starts screaming now, right? Because the control, if I had enough money, could I tank if there were a bunch of people that had a bunch of money, could I tank the economy to make it look worse than it actually was?
Yeah.
Yes, you can create a bubble on the upside. You can create a bubble on the downside, but it's big enough that it can equalize. So that's a harder one to do long-term. I can do it short-term, but not long-term. Can I create these rights? They are trying really hard to get it ratcheted up, right? And they're utilizing all the powers in there. So that one, very likely. Can I create discontent? They're trying that one, but I think that one's least likely to happen because I think all of the people, they probably have meetings about this every day. Like they could have, I could see Trump and Musk sitting in a room and say, hey guys, they're going to try to create something between us. There's going to be some news that say that somebody said something on the other side and something on the other side and get each other mad at each other. Yeah. So when that happens, let's not even pay attention to it. So the Vance is just a continuation of that deal. Next one will be RFK, then there'll be another Elon Musk one and whatever. So all of that stuff, super likely to happen.
I agree. Fetterman is the perfect example of picking sides. I want that kind of Dem.
He has gone back and forth. There are some
Fetterman?
things. Yeah. So he's pretty reasonable. Right. He will go in one direction. He's a big Israeli supporter, but there are a couple of things that he said he was going to vote for, a couple of the confirmations, and he double backed on him because of the pressure that his party put on him. But because things are so tight right now, and if the outcome wouldn't have changed, so let's just say Pete Hegseth during the nomination, they had enough votes to do it anyway. Him coming over onto the Republican side wouldn't have changed the outcome either way. It would have been his vote that decided something would happen. So that was a safe sort of, what's that called when you,
kind of like a concession or
yeah,
something.
that would have been a safe one to show, look, I can be reasonable. I can, the other side could draw me over if their argument was good enough. But then he had a couple that he did veer off from the Democrat side, which probably got him a lot of hatred. So I'm going to probably say they're going to pressure him into not being as maverick or independent as he really wants to be. I've listened to a bunch of interviews with him, and he is for sure a liberal Democrat. He's probably one of the most reasonable liberal Democrats that are in the Senate right now.
Yeah. I've been seeing a little bit here and there, a little more about him. And I'm like, he seems to sort of like call out something when it's bullcrap.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Our little articles highlighted up there.
That does not sound terrible. Hawaii. It does not.
You want to move the mouse? There you go. Hawaii. Yeah. That does not sound terrible. Hawaii. We should go to Hawaii. Bring the show on the road.
Dude. Love Ohio for what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
We have less bugs, less volcanoes, less tsunamis.
You know what? Coincidentally, this is so funny. I was telling you earlier I got a new cell phone. The saleswoman that we were working with was from Hawaii. And she's here because her husband's military. They met in Hawaii. They came here because he's from here. He's now back in Hawaii, but she's here for a while. And all she did is talk about, like, I can't believe I'm here. I'm here. He gets to go back to Hawaii and I'm here. Like, this is where I want to be. And I was like, we were military. We left and we chose to come back. I said, I don't mind it here.
Well, I've heard that Hawaii is very liberal and they really hate mainland Americans. I heard that.
She said some parts of it. If you're a tourist, you better be careful. Like some parts do not like visitors. I'm like,
doesn't sound.
Well,
I mean, the weather
fun.
might be nice. It might be pretty, and you can see some volcanoes. But I don't know. I don't know if that's on my list or not.
Yeah, I've heard. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's beautiful parts, but I've heard there's sucky parts. But which like everywhere, there is. But we appreciate you listening in Hawaii. But yeah, I've never minded here. I would love to be warmed in the heat of an active volcano.
Dude, I will lower you into that volcano in a heartbeat and let you enjoy the lava. Elaine says, I think part of the problem is moderate Democrats don't believe the left lunatics are controlled by dark money. BLM, antics, indivisible, act blue, open society is funded by a man that hates America and his citizens. And I look at some of that stuff, and being an admirer of history, we had patriots in the beginning that were willing to die for this country. And I think there's a lot of bloodlines that have almost a loyalty to the crown and are still a little pissed off that we broke away from what was their, autocratic. I'm going to call it autocratic. There we go. And they're still mad. And so they're beneath the surface trying to still dismantle the 200-year experiment. They've got a long trajectory of trying to be a saboteur of what we have here. And then sometimes I just think it's outsiders that say, hey, we're going to kill these guys from within, and we know how to do it, and they're going to let us, so might as well. So It could be a hybrid of both too. Sam says, look up Brightside in Northeast Ohio. We can experience all 4 seasons in an 18-hour period in one day. See, there are people that visit here, and the first snow, the things that you and I are like, it's snowing, they're out their window saying, it's so beautiful. We have something that's beautiful from the outsider's perspective.
Yeah. One of my best friends from down south in Georgia came to visit. It was like right before Thanksgiving, or maybe right after Thanksgiving, right around there. And she came, and the night she came, it just snowed like crazy, and it was freezing, and the roads were bad, but it was beautiful. And I kept telling her, I swear to you, last weekend it was 55 degrees and sunny. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just what it is. But I mean, that's not unheard of other places too. When I was living in Georgia, one of our coldest days of the year one year was March, and we were freezing. But
all right, anything else going on? Because we went totally political yet again today. I want to thank everybody who listened and watched today's program, and everybody who contributed and commented. I'm getting to know our callers and listeners here just as much as we did on talk radio.
Yeah.
Those tried and true people who value a sounding board and getting their grievances off their chest.
We appreciate all of you that sign on and interact and listen, and you can call, you can type.
Tomorrow, Luke and Isaac will be back. This will be fun. So have a great day, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for